Hey everybody, so in this video we're going to be talking about AP Top 25 rankings for week 13. A lot of chaos has happened this last week, so I wanted to make a video talking about the top 25 as well as some of my own thoughts on the top 25. So let's hop right into it. And so, of course, we got the AP Top 25 as well as the Coaches Poll. I always like to look at it, compare it, just kind of see what we got. And so, of course, at the top we have Oregon. Oregon's going to stay at the top until something else happens. They barely escaped over Wisconsin, but they still got the job done. Still think they should have maybe lost that game. They were not playing that well. I personally think that Ohio State's a better team than them overall, but because Oregon did beat Ohio State by one, you still give them the nod. But these are a top two, a very solid top two right now in this top 25. We got Texas. Texas still doesn't have any big wins, but they have an opportunity to beat A&M in a couple weeks. So we're looking forward to that, to seeing what Texas is really made out of. Penn State and Indiana, they don't really have any big wins, but they continue to get the job done and beating people below them. Penn State's only loss coming at the hands of Ohio State by a touchdown. So you can still give them that respect, but I don't really think they're as good as their record says they are. We also have Notre Dame right below them. They aren't in any conference, but they're getting the job done against everybody. They have a big win against A&M at the beginning of the season, and that has turned out to be a very, very important win. And although they do have one loss, I'm still very, very high on them. I know that they're one of those teams that's going to get the job done. And then you got this SEC wall of Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Mostly a good ordering for them, but I would swap Georgia and Ole Miss because Ole Miss just destroyed Georgia a couple weeks ago. And so, but these are your top five SEC teams here. And so we got them going there. And so as part of that, we got some very, very dangerous teams there. Then you, of course, you got Miami, the top ACC team, Boise State, the top Mountain West team, SMU right behind them, and then BYU, who just suffered a heartbreaking loss to Kansas. They made some poor choices down the stretch. And then, of course, you got A&M. There's your sixth high, that SEC team. It's crazy to think there's six SEC teams in the top 15. Then you got Colorado with the Big 12. Colorado has a chance to control their own destiny and play BYU for the Big 12 championship to get that top four bid. So it's looking good for Colorado. Clemson is slowly creeping themselves back up the rankings after a few losses to Georgia, and very, very important for them that they can sneak past a Miami or SMU. I am pretty high on them. I think I like them better than Miami, but right now they're not playing as well. And so they need to keep stepping it up so that they can win those big games. But right now they don't control their own destiny unless one of these teams loses. And so then you, of course, you got Army in South Carolina. Army has the potential of being like one of those like 18 to 20 seeds that just happens to be the fifth highest conference champion. If the ACC or the Big 12 blunder somewhere where they lose, they could sneak in. But if they go undefeated and the other teams do well, they probably won't make it in, even though they'll have a perfect record. I don't think there's any world where Tulane makes it in, even though they're part of that same conference. It's got to be Army if they're going to send somebody, just because of that record. South Carolina has been red hot. It's really cool to see South Carolina doing well. They've had a lot of close games. They're so close to actually being undefeated, so I think it's fitting that they're in here. Arizona State's another big one. Arizona State had a big, big win this past week, and they're deservedly in the top 20, 25, and so they got a big game against BYU next week to really prove if they belong here and if they can make it to that Big 12 title game and sneak in there. You got teams like Iowa State who had a bye this past week, so nothing happened. I still don't think they're top 25, but they'll stay there for now until they are proven otherwise. You got some teams like UNLV and Illinois sneaking in, but they're not really going to make much wave other than trying to get a high bowl spot. Then Washington State, we're not even talking about them. They shouldn't even be on this list. They lost some scrubs this past week in New Mexico at the end of the game, and they shouldn't have lost that. And so just kind of looking at this and kind of comparing it to the coaches poll, a lot of it's expectedly pretty much the same. I like that they have Kansas State in here, and I love they have that Memphis shout in there. But for the most part, it's pretty much the same list. And so, criticize this list all you want, but you can't criticize it unless you got your own list to work with. And so I'm gonna let y'all criticize my list. This is what I got for my top 25. And so for my top 25 for week 13, my own AP poll in a sense, we're going to just kind of skip past these first couple ones because they ultimately, at the end of the day, don't really matter. They're not going to make any championship teams. Or championship games. Kansas State, Iowa State, Missouri, Pittsburgh, all great teams, but they're just not going to make those playoffs, so we're not going to spend as much time on them. Tulane, even if they beat number 19 here, Army, in the championship, they're still not going to make the college football playoffs. But Army has a really, really good shot if they just keep winning out and they put a statement game against Tulane in that championship game. And so those are kind of your 19 through 25. Army has the best shot, of course, if they can win out and make it convincing and other people fail along the way. The next one we got is South Carolina, another SEC team. They've been red hot, and they had a big win this past week where they came back and won. And I think they very much deserve to be upon this list. Right above them, we got Clemson. I like that Clemson's on here and that they're going to keep climbing. I really think that they're a top 2 ACC team, but for right now, they need to keep proving it so that they can make it to that title game. Right above them, we got Colorado. Colorado's been red hot, and they control their own destiny right now with their conference record, just right behind BYU to be able to make that title game. And so they just got to win out, and they can make the top 12. Right above them, Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a very solid spot. I agree with the AP poll on this one. We're right there at 15. That's a really good spot for them to be. Then I got Miami. I am not particularly high on Miami. Some of their antics of barely winning games. I think they're the second team out of the playoffs. I don't think that they're gonna make it in, and I'm gonna explain why in a little bit. Right above them, I have SMU. I have SMU as the top ACC team. Right now, I really think that their one loss to BYU still is a good loss because BYU is still a really, really good top 25 team, and SMU has been beating up everybody else. So I think they're going to win out. I'd love to see SMU play Clemson, but it'll likely be SMU playing Miami. So that's kind of your back half of the top 25. Moving to the top 12, we got BYU. I think BYU will end up getting that bid as the conference champion, so they'll be the 4th highest conference champion, and they'll make that top 5 or the top 4. They'll get that first round bye. But I could easily see it being Colorado or even an Arizona State sneaking in there because the Big 12 is just that open. BYU's got to get their act together. Boise State, I think they're just barely going to squeeze out BYU just because their one loss right now so far is to Oregon by 3 points. And so it's important to recognize that win and that loss, and BYU, losing to Kansas, who is not on the same level as losing to Oregon. So I think that they're going to give them the nod there. So right above them, we have Tennessee. Even though Tennessee's in my top 10, I think they're going to be the first out because, of course, if you have SMU moving into the top 12 and BYU and Boise State also staying in, being conference champions, Tennessee is going to be that first one out. Being my 5th highest SEC team, they're going to be out. Right above them, I have Indiana. I know Indiana's on the polls as like the number 5 team. I am not as high on them until they have a big win. Like if they beat Ohio State this next week, then I'll put them back in the top 5 or 4. But right now they don't have any of those wins to justify being in the top 5 at the moment. And they don't, I'm not a big believer in them right now, but I'm hoping they prove me wrong. Right above them, Penn State. I have a little more respect for them because they lost to Ohio State by 7 points, but they don't have any other close, good games against ranked opponents. But they have been taking care of business of people below them. But I would love for them to prove me wrong and to make that conference championship and try to prove some people wrong. Right above them, I got Georgia. Georgia's 8-2. They've got some big wins and some big losses. They beat Texas, but then they lost to Ole Miss. And that's why I have Ole Miss right above them because Ole Miss beat them pretty good, and I want to give them that nod as 2 of the 8-2s and the chaos that is the SEC. Right above them, I got Alabama. I think that Alabama is overall better than Ole Miss and Georgia, and that they will continue to perform well. Right above them, I have Texas. And even though I am a strong believer that Texas is not as good as these other teams right below them, it's very close. but because of the record that they have and the position they have as being the top team in the SEC, until they lose, I have them ranked higher, even though I don't necessarily believe that they're going to be better than them, if that makes sense. Number 3, Notre Dame. I'm super high on Notre Dame. They have just been beaten up on everybody this season, and it's been really, really good to see Notre Dame doing well in football. They did have that loss to Northern Illinois earlier in the year, but they've been destroying everybody. They destroyed Louisville when Louisville was ranked. They beat Navy by 40, and they've just been destroying everyone else that they should be destroying by humongous margins, like beating Purdue by 59, and Florida State's not that good, but they still beat them by 50, and they just have 2 more games. They have the chance to beat Army this next week, and so Army here, if they want a big statement win, they got to beat Notre Dame right here. I don't think it'll happen, but hey, you never know. But Notre Dame has the chance to prove that they are a top 4 team. But because they aren't in a conference, they of course are not going to get one of those bids. They'll be the 5th highest team, or the 6th. They'll be the 6th because of number 2, Ohio State. Ohio State's going to be the highest non-conference champion. I still think that Oregon is going to overall win out. No surprise there. They will be the number 1 overall team. And so just looking at this, I think that Ohio State overall is going to be better than Oregon. They'd probably be my pick to win the title at the moment out of all the teams. But with all of this in mind, you got Oregon and you got Texas, Boise State, BYU is your top 4 seeds. And then you got Ohio State 5, Notre Dame 6, Alabama 7, almost 8, Georgia 9, Penn State 10, Indiana 11, and then rounding out the top 12, you got SMU. So that's who I think are going to be in the playoffs right now. Tennessee and Miami just missing out. But I would love for this to be wrong and for all of the chaos to happen. But that's about it for this video. Let me know what y'all think of my picks and give me some of your picks as well. But thanks for watching.